Hi guys, my name is Karthik and I'm from executeautomation.com and welcome to another session of our Selenium with Java series that we have been talking about. And in this lecture, we are going to talk about how we can customize our code with whatever that we have did so far. So what I really mean about the customization and how the customization is going to help in our automation testing with whatever that we are doing, at least until here. So you have seen that we have been writing quite a lot of code right now, right? Like we have a login operation being done, creating a user being done, and a log off operation is being done. But as you know, all these operations that we are trying to do, we are mostly playing around with the UI element using this line of code, the driver.find element by of whatever identifier that we're trying to identify, and passing the locator and then performing the operation. So we can see that this line of code is basically splitted into three distinct parts. One is the driver, which is the one which is going to be the browser itself, as we know, which is going to be responsible for giving us the page that we are playing around with. And then the find element and the by of this operation, which is nothing but the locator finding operation, is the one which is going to be responsible for finding an UI element from the browser. And the operation is this one, like click operation or send keys operation, or even for the drop down selection, we are trying to do what is called as a select operation. So we have seen these different kinds of operation on the UI, and we also saw in our last lecture like how we can use the select by visible text to select from a drop down box. I'm sure you would have played around with the select by index and select by other operations that we have got. Like if I just do select, you can see that we have select by visible text, index, and value. So hopefully you have tried doing it. If not, I would highly recommend you to again try it out. But if not, we are even going to customize that with this custom way of refactoring the code in this particular lecture. Well, as I said, in this lecture, we are going to see how we can customize this particular three parts of operation in a custom method. So that is what we are going to be doing in this particular lecture. So basically, we are going to see how we can reduce this number of lines of code over here and refactor them in a more readable fashion. What I mean about refactoring over here is that you can see that there are so many moving parts in this particular line of code. We can probably reduce this moving parts with a custom method which can help our life more easier. And one of the things that you can see easily is that if I try to perform two operation in one element, then I have to write two lines of code. So what if I wanted to click the text box before I send key? Then I have to call these two line to perform the operation. So what I mean about that is that if I want to click and then if I want to send key in the username, then I have to just do this. I have to go do a click and then I do a send keys operation. And what if I wanted to click and then clear the text box before I perform and send keys, like data entry operation in the UI? So for instance, if we just go to our application over here and if you try to enter any value in the text box, what if there is already a value all the time, and if you want to just click it and then clear this and then try to enter any value in there? So how do you actually do that? Well, now to do all these operations, I have to go and click it, and then I have to go and identify the element using its username like that, and then I do a clear operation, like clicking it, clearing it, and then sending the text, which is the admin key there. So I have to perform three operations. What if my whole application has this situation where I have to perform three different operations for a single control? So how do we get around these kinds of problems? These are things that we are going to be discussing in this particular lecture. So let's see how we can achieve that. And the way we can achieve this, every single thing that I'm talking about, is basically using the method operation. You remember, method is nothing but a grouping of certain operation into one single method, or encapsulating the entire operation in one single method. that is where method comes in handy. And we have discussed about method even in our core Java concept before. So we are going to see how we can able to achieve that over here as well. But as I said, I'm going to write the custom methods. But where do we actually write the custom method? I can write the custom methods somewhere in the same test class file, or I can create another class in this test package, like in the test Java package for the getting started and start doing it, or I can create a separate package and do it. But I always recommend, while you try writing it like a reusable method, which can be used across multiple different tests, then you do it in the source main Java, which is under here. That is the place where you can maintain your code or put all your library code, so that every single time while you try to perform any common reusable operation, you use this area to perform those. And that's when this becomes like a framework. And I'm talking about framework suddenly here. So this is something you might have heard while you try writing any automation test code. People talk about frameworks. That's what it is. So frameworks come in handy. And I'm not going to talk about frameworks yet. It is still a long way to go from here. I know some people are commenting in the lectures asking me how about working with some real projects and stuff. But guess what? Those things are still a long way to go. And I'm not going to talk about that, at least until now, because we still have to go quite a long way, right? So as that said, I'm going to show you how we can create a framework kind of structure, but not exactly framework in here. So I'm going to go create a new Java package. And in this package, I'm going to name probably as utilities or reusable libraries, or maybe extensions, whatever that you want to call it. So let's say I'm going to call this as extensions for now. And then I'm going to create a class file under this package extensions. And over here, I'm going to say Selenium, or maybe UI element extensions or whatever, something like that. I mean, I'm just naming it whatever that I'm just thinking of, but it could be anything that you wanted to call it, but I'm just calling it over here. It's basically, this is like an extensions that is going to be helpful for you to extend the functionality of what you're trying to do within your Selenium test over here. So one of the example that I'm just talking about is very specific business operation that you have got. Like every single text box, you have to go click it, and then you need to perform a clear operation, and then you perform a send operation. So you are essentially doing quite a lot of different operations over there. So I'm going to say public static void perform send keys, or perform enter text over here, which is going to perform certain operation over here. But you can see that if I wanted to perform these operation, which is these, let's say I'm going to copy this entire thing and I'm going to paste over here in this method. Immediately, the IntelliJ IDE is going to complain me that, Karthik, where is this driver coming from? Cannot resolve the symbol driver. Now you may ask, yes, Karthik, where is driver? Because we have been passing this driver from the instantiation in the main method, and we pass the driver variable into the respective login or create user method, and then we perform the operation. But right now, because you moved this entirely out from this particular method, which is nothing but the login method, I don't really have the driver object. So what is something that I have to do? Well, naturally, you know what it is. It's going to be the web driver of the driver. So you need to pass it over here, and you see that the errors are gone, which is great. So that is working already fine. But this doesn't really avoid the problem that we are talking about. What I mean about that is, as you can see, we are hard coding the locators over here. It's like this perform enter text is not just specific to one single locator, right? Because you may have to perform location of the element in many different way. So it's not just one single locator that you have to do it. And also, you may notice that you have got many different operation in here, like click operation, clear operation, and then send keys operation. And you also need to pass a value there. So there are so many moving parts here. So how to get around this problem? Well, we can make this locators over here as generic as possible. So like this one can be made as generic. So what I say generic is we can move this locator identification as a parameter here. So I'm gonna say by of the locator, something like that. So when I say locator, then I can just pass this as locator. Remember, like this way is even more straightforward. So now I can make this as generic method. So this method now can perform enter text by clicking it, clearing it, and then sending a key to any locator that you are passing it to this particular method, right? That's how this method should be, to be honest. That's already been done over here, which is great. But how about send keys, which is sending the value? Now that method, that value needs to come from a parameter as well, which is going to be a string value. So I'm going to say string of the value, and then I can just pass in the value here. And now this is not hard coded as well. So this is how you can see that you can write a custom method in Selenium Java. And now if I just go back to our code here, I can directly call this particular class file with the static method. So if I just go here and if I try to say UI element extension, and once I do that, you will see that the import extensions.ui element extensions package is going to be added, because this extensions is actually sitting over here, and this UI element is sitting under the extension. So that's why you get a import statement. That is the power of the IntelliJ IDE, because it does these things for you and you don't really have to necessarily do it. So it's automatically done. And now if I hit dot, you see that we get this method perform enter text. I can now do that. But I now need to pass the driver, which is going to be this driver. And I also need to pass the locator. You remember, for the username, the locator is this one. So I can now just pass that over here. And I also need to pass the value, which is going to be admin. So now you may notice that these 3 lines of code are now turned into just one single line. And that's the power, guys. This is how you write a custom method in Selenium Java. And not only that, you can now you are basically encapsulating the complexity of the identification and performing the operation in this particular method over here. So you're delegating the complexity in this perform enter text method, which is amazing. And not only that, now the same thing can be achieved even for a click operation. Let's say I just have to streamline the way I'm writing the code. So probably I can just go back to this particular UI element extension class, and I can just say public static and void. I'm going to say perform click operation. I can just do that as well. And I can pass the locator, because for click, you don't necessarily have to pass any value. So you can just do the click operation, something like this. So this way you can see that you can get rid of this one. So you can just maybe cut this code and you just say UI element extension dot perform click and pass the locator, and that should perform the click operation, but you need to pass the driver as well, something like that. So you see that now the things are getting streamlined, right? And for sending the password, I can just say this one can be turned into password, and the value that we wanted to pass is password there, and it does work. And now everything is working fine. And finally, we need to perform a click operation using the CSS selector. So let me cut this code, and I'm going to say UI extension dot perform click driver and this locator. So you see that now we have made a bit of custom code here. I know I'm kind of starting to make things more faster this time than compared to before. Like, you may be thinking, Karthik, you are just running so faster. Just let me know in the comments of this particular video that if I'm running very fast. If not, I will try to just continue the space. If you think so, then just let me know. I can slow down from our next video or so. But I'm sure you have already started following this, so I'm sure you are quite good at this point, because these codes are just straightforward code, right? So now that is good. This is already happening. Well, as that said, this is the custom method that we have written. How about over here that I wanted to do? Guess what? It's going to be exactly the same that I wanted to do. But I wanted to do it for this select operation. I'm going to leave these things to you to do it, except this select operation. How do I make this thing even more better? So for the select operation, guess what? I'm going to go here. I'm going to say public static void perform drop down selection, something like that. And I'm going to pass the web driver and the locator, and most importantly, the drop down value, right? So I'm going to say drop down value. That's something I wanted to pass in. So for the select operation, we have the select, and then we need to pass the locator, and then what we have to do with that, right? So I'm going to basically say var select is equal to new of the select, and I'm going to pass the locator, something like this. And that doesn't really work because we have to pass the driver dot find element of the locator, like that. And I'm going to get or select by the visible text, which is going to be the drop down value, as you can see over here. So this is how I perform the drop down selection. But you may have noticed that within this drop down selection, there is also a way that you can select it by index and select it by value. You may also get the first selected options or get all the options from the from the select operation. So how do I customize this drop down further with different operation that I'm trying to perform? Well, in order to do that, you can just say I'm going to select the drop down by text. Then I can say perform drop down selection by text. That's going to do by text operation. But if you wanted to do using its index, then you can write a method something like by index, and then you can pass an index value in here, and then you can just say select by index, and you can see that the index basically takes an integer value. That's why I'm going to pass the index as integer. And if you want to select it by a value, then you can just say select by value, and you can just pass a drop down, probably you can say just drop down text. Yeah, for this one it could be drop down text, and this can be drop down text, and this can be drop down value if you're going to be selecting based on a value. So select by value, just going to be drop down value. So you can see that I'm basically going to be overloading, not overloading to be honest, because the names are almost different, so it's not overloading. But you can see that now we have three methods to perform this drop down selection operation over here. So if I go back to this code, guess what? Over here, if I wanted to select the drop down using its value or visible text, so I can just say UI element extension dot perform drop down by selected perform drawdown by selected by a text. Then I can just say driver, and I pass this locator, which is going to be by ID, something like that. And I need to pass the value, which is going to be medium. Yeah, I guess it's a middle, right? So middle. So that way it actually gonna select the middle over here. But if I wanted to, let's say, choose based on its index, then I can just say by index, and then I can pass the index as maybe 3. It's gonna select the different value over there. So let's see how this really works. So if I just go and run this entire test, do you see that it has added a different value this time? Like it has chosen the grade as, oh, I know why, because let me stop this test. I have to do the exact same thing for the, like after the validation of the is field is required, right? So let me go copy this line. See, now we have reduced the number of lines a bit from 2 lines to just 1 single line. I'll choose the grade. And now let's try to debug this test. Hopefully that should just work. I'll put a breakpoint here. You see that this one is basically going to be a C level this time, because I have given the index as 3. So it is choosing the C level, because that's how the third value is like 0, 1, 2, 3. So it's C level. So that is how you can see that we could able to write the custom methods over here in Selenium Java. And we can extend this custom method even further by, let's say, with different sort of generic methods as well. So for example, you may ask like, Karthik, how can I, let's say, write these method in a more reusable fashion? Because you are passing the web driver every single time here, which sounds to be like a bit more vague at this point of time. Like, why should we pass this driver every single time? Can we just not pass the driver and just pass the locator? Like, how do we get around this particular problem? Guess what, guys? We are going to be discussing what is called as page object model code. And during the page object model code, we can get rid of this driver entirely. And in fact, we can get rid of this by locator as well. And then we can start using the web element directly. And that is the power of the page object model pattern code. And by that way, you will notice that this code can be even more streamlined, and it's going to be even more like really good while compared to whatever that we are trying to over here. We are going to be talking about the page object model code in our next session, where we are going to see how we can get rid of this one. And once we're done with this page object model code, I really wanted to focus on the other aspect of this Selenium testing, which is going to be bringing in the test framework, because we are also seeing that we are just keep on writing everything on a main method. Instead, we could probably bring in the testing functionality using a test runner libraries, which can make your life even more easier. So those things we are going to be talking in our upcoming lectures. So stay tuned in this season of this session so far that we have discussed, so that you can understand everything that we have discussed so far. And hope you got the idea of how you can write the custom methods and customize the code. Starting our next lecture, we are going to talk about the page object model and how we can streamline this code even further with the page object model code, and how we can use this custom method that we have written in even more better fashion. Catch you in the next one.